Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Josh Harmon. Welcome to the Gnomon stream today. We have a really awesome event lined up for you today. Before we got to get into that, I'm going to get some housekeeping stuff out of the way first. As you can probably see right here, this event is sponsored by Lenovo, so thank you to Lenovo for sponsoring these events. These events are brought to you by them, and we're only able to do them because of them. So again, thank you Lenovo for that. Tonight we're going to be talking with Luca Nemolato. Luca is an Italian concept artist working in film, TV, video games, and commercials. He started his education in Italy, where he graduated in fine art in 2010, specializing in painting and sculpting. Luca then continued his education in the US, where he moved to Los Angeles to take courses at Gnomon. He has made a name for himself working on incredible projects such as The Shape of Water, Jungle Cruise, Black Adam, Westworld, Middle Earth Shadow of War, and some unannounced things for Monolith, Dice LA, and many more. Luca is also the author of two Gnomon Workshop titles, one of which we'll be talking about tonight, and has been an instructor for many years. Before we introduce Luca, I want to say something that we're doing different for this stream. We're kind of partnering with the Gnomon Workshop for this stream, and they have decided that they're going to give a code for all viewers tonight. This code will be valid for 1 week, so it will end on April 7th. But if we can go ahead and flash that code right over here real quick, the code is going to be valid for 20% off a subscription to the Gnomon Workshop. That will either be a 20% discount on the first month of a monthly subscription or 20% off an entire annual year of a Gnomon Workshop subscription. So if you're interested in that, please check that thing out right there. You can check out Luca's full tutorial there, as well as his other one that he did before too. So please check that out. We will also be giving away a 6-month subscription to the Gnomon Workshop. The winner will be chosen from those who RSVP'd on our Eventbrite link, and we'll be choosing them after the stream. If you didn't RSVP for the stream, sorry, the RSVPs are closed because the event has already started, but we'll be doing many more of these giveaways in the future. So it's kind of an incentive for you to sign up for the Eventbrite, and you'll therefore be eligible for raffles in the future. So before we bring on Luca, we actually have a short trailer of his Gnomon Workshop title. So let's go ahead and play that real quick, and then we'll get started with the event.
Hi, I'm Luca Nemolato, and in this lecture I guide you through the process I use to create superhero concept art for films and television. We'll start everything in DAZ, we'll sketch in Photoshop, we'll sculpt in ZBrush, we'll create a cape in Marvel's Designer, and then we'll use Keyshot to render everything out. So let's get started.
Perfect. That was so great. All right, let's go ahead and bring on Luca, and we'll get started with the event. Hello, Luca. How are you doing?
Hi everyone, thank you for having me, Josh.
Oh, super excited to have you here. We've kind of been in the same circles for a long time. You graduated, you didn't graduate from Noma, but you took several courses there, right?
Yeah, I took several courses, I think 2011 and 12,
Mm-hmm.
and then I started my career from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember when I had finished working on Guardians of the Galaxy, I think it was one or two, you had done a bunch of stuff for Groot, I feel like, and we had kind of been like sort of in like the same characters, but never like working together. So this is cool to get to be chatting together like about
Yeah, I'm
concept art
very
stuff.
excited. I'm very, very
Yeah.
excited.
So I don't want to, I know we're not going to talk too much about the actual process of your DVD, of your title. I don't know if people use the word DVDs for those anymore, but
Yeah, it's
work the tutorial
tutorial. Yeah.
tutorial.
Yes.
We're not going to go step by step because that would kind of ruin the purpose of having the tutorial itself. But excited to chat with you for a little bit. So I was hoping maybe to start with you just to set the stage, have you tell us a little about yourself and then jump into it. And then I'm happy to answer and ask questions.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for having me here, and thank you for everyone for joining. Um, yeah, my as you said before, I come from Italy, moved here almost 11 years ago, and the sole purpose of moving here was for the Gnomon school.
Hmm.
I and the Gnomon Workshop. I remember back in Italy, I was able to watch the DVDs of the Gnomon Workshop, and I realized there was this big industry here, and that
Hmm.
could be a job for me. Coming from being a big fan of Lord of the Rings, and I could see the DVD extras where they showed that there was a job. I couldn't really grasp it, what it was. I didn't know there was a
Hmm.
name to it, but I knew I wanted to do that. I wanted to design creatures,
Hmm.
characters, things for movies. And the Norman Workshop really helped me bring me closer to the world, even being that far away. So that's why I really
Yeah.
appreciated it, because everybody in the world could basically come together. And then realized about the Norman school and was like, I need to, as soon as I'm finished with high school, that's where I need to go. And as soon as I
Totally.
landed and I've been a Norman, it just changed everything for me. Just the fact that I was surrounded by people, with
Hmm.
people that were interested in the same thing, and things that for years by myself in my bedroom I was trying to resolve in 3D. Now you could ask somebody and have it solved in a second.
Do you remember your first workshop title that you watched?
Ooh, the first one, I think there was a Aaron Sims
Ooh,
DVDs.
good one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I was really into always into creatures and characters. So
Mm-hmm.
those weren't the first ones.
Yeah. Was he? That was probably the one where he was like modeling in Softimage.
Oh, that was scary. Yeah, and I tried to pick it up because
Yeah.
you think it's the software that makes the
Yeah. Yeah.
artist
Of
that
course,
when
it's
you're
not.
younger, and it's
Yeah.
not, because then I was a disaster in soft image.
Mine was Ian Joyner. I watched Ian Joyner's. He did when he was doing characters for Blur, and he
Oh
did like
yeah.
a character one, and I was like, "This is so amazing!" And similar to you, like my experience was the same. I moved out to LA for school for at Noman after watching Noman Workshop titles.
Oh yeah, it brings so many people together, and I met so many people that are my friends to this day, and
Hmm.
it was such an amazing experience. And then when had the chance to do the DVD or tutorial, now there's no more DVDs.
Yeah.
I felt very proud. It was such a proud moment for me to be able to then now
Hmm.
produce for the Norman Workshop.
Absolutely. And I've already watched your superhero one. It's amazing.
Oh,
The
thank you.
trailer doesn't do it full justice. I mean, it does because it's what you do, but it's like cool to be able to see the way that you're thinking as you're working, and how you're utilizing so many different tools in your pipeline. I think that's something that I'm seeing a lot of artists do, where they're not just sticking to the tools that they know. Like they're trying new tools, they're exploring new tools. So even in your work, your title, you're using DAZ, you're using Marvelous Designer, you're using ZBrush, you're using Keyshot, you're using Photoshop. Like that's 5 programs to do something that many people have done in stills and painting or just in ZBrush. But I think that the you are somebody, and there's a lot of other people who are exploring other things. And I know we're going to talk about it later. So, but the spoiler alert: you've also been trying Unreal recently.
Yeah, I think the more tools you can learn, the
Hmm.
bigger toolkit you have, the more things you can do. And tools are there to be used at any time you need, and like not be
Hmm.
married to one tool or another. Like if there is a new tool like a reel, I finally
Hmm.
picked it up. I had time to pick it up and understand how great it was for concept. And
Oh
it's
yeah.
usually not used for that. And but now more and more people are using it for concept. And I do feel it's gonna be now the next software where people are gonna be like in that software for a long time. Like you could do
Hmm.
start to finish in the software, and it's very exciting. Like I'm always excited about learning something new, either a
Hmm.
tool or a technique, and that's what keeps me interested and hopefully makes my art better.
Yeah. the tools, I think, and we'll jump into it in a second, but like the tools are interesting because you had said it about like the Softimage thing. It's not the tool. The tool helps you as like an artist or as a creative um, do something that you had trouble doing in another software. It makes certain parts of it easier. So like you probably could have, found a different way to do the cape in ZBrush.
Yeah.
There's other ways to do that, but you found a way to do it probably relatively quickly in Marvelous Designer. It takes like little to no time.
Yeah, exactly. And everybody, that's what I encourage people, use whatever software it's good for you, wherever you feel comfortable with.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, I got used to that, to Marvelous, and for like a thing like a cape. And yeah, before I would just do it in ZBrush, but then I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
can actually spend 10 minutes in the software, have something that makes me happier.
Hmm.
It does look better. And these all these software are so easy to use. It's astonishing how I remember
Yeah.
back in the day, I started with Maya. I was doing
Hmm.
polygonal modeling in Maya, and that was tough. There was a lot to learn. It took me months and months to learn those things.
Yeah.
And like, but now softwares, they help you express your creativity so much faster and so much more creative. Like they
Hmm.
really try to, like, ZBrush looks crazy. The
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
first,
Yeah.
when you first open it, but then
Yeah.
really it's not. Like, it's there for the artist, and there is 1,000 ways of doing something. That's why I'm excited about these softwares. I'm sure we'll do the same result with different pipelines.
Yeah, absolutely. And even I don't know if you've explored this. I've just been getting into this, but like sculpting or drawing on iPads. Procreate, obviously, a lot of people know about Procreate. It's
Yeah.
massive now. But then even like Forger and Nomad Sculpt, they're bringing that to the iPad. For me, that's a huge thing. But even if it's a different way to do it, or it's a different platform to do it, now you can do it in a different place. I can
Yeah.
go somewhere and travel and do it rather than feel like I'm stuck at my desk,
That's for
which
sure.
is cool.
Yeah, and technology is moving so fast, so much faster. But I also remind everybody to, like, to go back to the basic as well, to the
Mm.
fundamentals, because the
Mm-hmm.
softwares, as you say, they don't make the man. When you know what you're doing, then you use the software to achieve what you want. But
Mm-hmm.
if you solely rely on the software to do the hard part, I think at some point the work is going to fall apart.
Yeah, I agree. You still gotta have the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into a little bit of the showing of your process and a little bit of that. So I'm going to let you lead the way there.
Yeah,
Um, Go ahead.
I'm gonna start with sharing the screen, like,
Okay.
and show, like, my first step, for example, for this DVD or for any character in general. Now I started using DAZ, and DAZ is
Mm.
such an amazing software because, first of all, it's free. So let me share the screen. It's a free software, and
Mm-hmm.
it does have a lot of contents that people put out that you can buy and use and start from. That,
Mm-hmm.
you can basically, also feels like a community of artists. They can support each other. It's
Mm-hmm.
really amazing. And like, when you're working on characters and like you need a base, I was used to, of course, I always oh, is the screen sharing?
There it
Okay,
is.
perfect. um I was used to, of course, do all these step in ZBrush, but then what was happening in my pipeline is that I fixed with that is that I was starting everything in T pose. Like, you see the character here is in a T pose,
Yeah.
and then I was sculpting my designs, and then I had to post them later. And in
Mm-hmm.
concept, you will know, that the fundamental thing is the speed of how we can push things
Yeah.
out. So the softwares that are slowing you down, they're actually harming you.
Mm.
So I was getting to a point where I was like working in ZBrush directly in pose, and then I didn't have the symmetry going on, so the work was getting really just double the work. But then when I found out that I could use DAS for it, and I'll show you why DAS is such a great tool, even on a post object, I'm like, that changed my pipeline. Because as a concept
Mm.
artist, I need to bring out ideas. And like, when I was working on Titans and superhero shows, at first steps, you want to explore poses, you want to explore dynamic images. You
Mm-hmm.
don't want just a character standing there, because sometimes I felt like my design could be as strong as I can, but if
Yeah.
the image looked dead, the character looked dead and standing there and cold, the image doesn't get selected.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why in that, you can start from any models they give, and you can buy something. But if you want the figures, you can use like the Genesis Ed Mail. And the cool thing is that they're fully editable and they have great textures already. Even if most of the time we're gonna be covering the bodies and stuff. But the cool part is that there's settings where you can start making muscular, you can
Mm-hmm.
go skinnier. Like, there's so many things you can do with this base. And let me preface that, look, these bodies are not the most realistic ones, and it's not necessarily what I end up with. But even as a base, and then I resculpt on top of them, they give me such a great advantage. And you will
Right.
see in the DVD too, I resculpt a lot of the anatomy, or in other cases, because since I'm doing concept, I'm not really worried about breaking the models or cheating. Like when I put pieces together, it doesn't
Hmm.
matter to me because my end goal is a painting. And then if that gets selected, I can go back to the model and clean that up later. But my end goal is paintings, is designs, is images. Um, so I can easily change this body. I can change the bodybuilding details. Like say, we're
Hmm.
doing a superhero, we'll just go and um, making him a bit more muscular. Let's say when we're happy with that body. The cool thing of that is that it does come with a lot of poses that you can start
Hmm.
from, and you can also buy a lot. So you can see here over the years, I built a library of things that I bought that I know I can start from. So if I want like a superhero character, it's like, oh, what does inspire me? And of course, everything starts from the brief of the character. You have to know what you're doing already. Like before I start a concept, I always like think about a 60% of the design in my mind before I even
Hmm.
start messing around with the softwares. So let's say, oh, I want some more superhero poses. I can scroll through the poses I have here, and I can drag and drop, and the character boom switches, right? Like it just is already posing. And again, you will see that the way I'm working is always based on camera angles, is always based on what it's
Hmm.
my final image going to be, not just the
To the
full
image.
3D.
Yeah.
Yeah, always to the image. So that's one thing to remember. We are using 3D, but we're using 3D for 2D ideas, basically. So it's
Hmm.
just a starting tool. So let's say you can scroll to some poses that you bought that you like, or you can also start yours from scratch. Like say I like this pose, but I always end up either mixing a couple, two, three poses, or just modifying something. For example,
Hmm.
I like this pose, but like I don't like the neck. So it's such a great software to go in and edit things and like easily change um my character. Like it's astonishing how fast it is and how easy it is, and how simple they make it. And like thinking about the image, or like the design, I'm gonna twist his body a little bit, make sure that his camera it's facing right on camera and all that. I'm usually, guys, also not worried about faces and stuff, because
Hmm.
I end up painting so much on them, and you'll see in the tutorial as well how I just leave the face as it is, and when I go to Photoshop, I do my thing on it. Unless I have like a character that I really need to specifically do in 3D, like a likeness of an actor or so on, or a scan of an actor. I'm not
Hmm.
really concerned about details I'm gonna replace in painting. So that also needs to be considered in your pipeline. You need to think about the long run on your pipeline, not just the one software at a time, but what you need from each software, and what time not to waste in each software.
Hmm. Yeah, you're
So
not
let's
going to mess with the face if you don't not that this part of the software isn't doesn't
it
matter about that.
is yeah, it's not for that. I don't care. So like now, let's say I'm ready. This is the pose I like. This is great. I do show you guys like how I do start from naked bodies depending on what you're doing. In this case, I was doing like a very tight Superman kind of fitting type of suits.
Hmm.
But I do like to put some boots in there too sometimes, just to have some basic shape to work with. And DAS has the amazing thing. It does has wardrobe as well that you can import, you can buy, you can create. Like, and as again, I'm not really married to whatever is in here. I use everything as a base to just speed my process up. So let's say I can write boots and grab some quick boots, drag the boots on him, and that's all I will need like as a base, because now I can have a base to work on. And that has such a great integration with ZBrush. With one button, you can just send to ZBrush. So you
Hmm.
think about the software you use in your pipeline and how fast they make your process. You just send it to ZBrush. I'm accepting from the other screen, and then going to ZBrush now is calculating. You go here,
There
and
it
now you
is.
have your character in ZBrush. I believe this
Yeah,
sphere
that's
here.
very fast. I've never used as that is much faster than I expected it to be.
It's super fast, and there is actually, guys, friends of mine where they actually build environment it does as well. Like you can render in does. Like does has a
Hmm.
lot of potential. depending on what you need to do. So I developed this pipeline because what I do is that once I get to ZBrush here, you can see what I was talking about. The bodies, they tend to look a little cartoonish. The female bodies are a bit better.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not I'm not crazy about this type of anatomy. I want to make it more my own. So you can easily go in and like resculpt this anatomy and fix things around. And the cool thing of DAS, and that's also mainly why I use it directly in Pose, is that they have super clean geometry. So
Mm-hmm.
what you can do is that you basically can use this posable symmetry, and
That's
that's a
nice.
that's a game changer because when you're sculpting now,
Yeah, you're
everything is
imposed too.
everything is in pose, and like you're not gonna resculpt things twice.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the main reason why you use DAS. You see how quickly it gets me to a pose. It gets me to a
Mm-hmm.
stage where I can actually do something dynamic with my images and not just have the character standing there. When I sculpt with the simple tools, very simple tools, clay tubes, diamond standard brush, like really just a few tools. That's my suggestion. Um, don't go crazy with brushes. Like you can really, I approach this since I had the fine art background where we sculpted in clay and everything. You don't need many things. You just need to build
Mm-hmm.
clay, smooth it out, cut into things, and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. And you see I have everything on hotkeys so that my process is also faster. Again, the pipeline is thought about. See even how I have set up the ZBrush here. I have all the buttons right next to me so that I don't have to go scroll into there and find things. Like I'm running the clock, like I'm running against the
Yeah.
clock. So basically what I do when I get to this stage, there's different ways of working, guys. This specific pipeline that I developed doing more superhero characters, that the clients do tend to want to see more versions, and I start a lot with sketching. Even if I model a lot, I sculpt a lot. Nowadays I find myself exploring creating the designs in sketch forms first, because
Mm-hmm.
I can get so many more ideas on the table really quickly before I can spend too much time in 3D. I found
Is that
myself in
stuff that you show to the directors, or is it just for you?
no, it look, it depends. Most of the time I show it, but it depends on what you're working with. Some people, like most people, want to see that process and they want to be part of the design process, and they want
Mm-hmm.
to see how before you go too far on something. They want to have an input. They want to see what you're doing, and they also want to have more ideas. I could potentially do a lot of things in 3D, create more ideas in 3D, but
Mm-hmm.
really the how you can convey and how fast you can create a design in just 2D. It can never be. You can be the fastest sculptor you can be, but I feel like what you can do in 2D is just so much faster that for a concept artist is fundamental. So that's why again, you don't just need to be a sculptor. You need to be a painter, or a good designer can be, needs to be able to do 2D, 3D, and everything. Um, so once get to this point and like I resculpt my anatomy, I can fix my poses. I can also, like, what I do sometimes is that I sculpt my own hands, and you can also get hands from DAS, but you can see that I find the hands a little cartoonish and goofy sometimes. So
Mm-hmm.
what I've done is build a big library of my hands, and or maybe spend time on these hands and resculpt pieces and stuff. Where don't be afraid, guys, to even blend the different uh, poses and models together. Like for example, in the DVD, I show how I actually end up piecing together two models from DAS, one on top of the other, because one I like the chest and one I like the legs.
Hmm.
And I'm not afraid of, you're doing concept, guys. Don't be afraid of really going in there and cut things out. Cut
Yeah.
the hands out, replace the hands, um, break things. It's fine. Like if you're doing concept, you don't have to be precious with your mesh. You can clean that later. For now, let's get the ideas on the page. Um, so when you get to this point, I really quickly also try to go to Keyshot,
Mm.
because then what I do is that use these as a base to then draw on top of. So if I go over here,
We got one
let's
quick
see.
question, which
Yes.
you can address real quick, which is how do you keep symmetry in ZBrush when you import it? I think somebody's looking for the button to do that.
Oh, you it's very simply go on the transform, and then you activate symmetry, and you have to make sure that you click this. Simon, I'm going to delete it. You want to make sure that you activate posable symmetry. here. And the possible symmetry only works with a model that has clean topology that is mirrored on both sides. So that's something to remember. So you see that the topology is so clean and mirrored. That's why that works.
Hmm.
So once I get to this point, let me see. I'm gonna open the Photoshop part. So this is the part where I start sketching in Photoshop. So this you'll see this process in the DVD where I resculpted my anatomy, I
Hmm.
posed my character the way I wanted. I had a proxy cape in there, um, just to give myself a base to draw on top. And like I found this technique, this pipeline I cannot develop by myself and just for what works for me. You guys feel, of course, free to modify the pipeline, like make it the make it work for yourself and make yourself faster and better. And even the material I use, all this stuff, guys, you'll see my DVD. The way I render things is very personal because these softwares, as I say, they're so artistic and they're so open. I've never met one artist that uses the same. Like I have some
Hmm.
process of rendering some passes in Keyshot that I kind of came up since the beginning of my career. I gotta kind of love them and got stuck with them.
Hmm.
And it's not necessarily how you do those passes; it's just how I do it, and
Yeah.
you can come up to the same result in different ways. And I highly encourage people to explore
Hmm.
because exploring what it does is that it lets you be your artist. Like I've done this error, as I said, like where I watched a DVD, a tutorial, like I was trying to learn exactly the way the artist made it, forgetting about that it's an artistic process and it
Yeah.
sometimes it's not linear. Like my pipeline I'm showing now, I'm trying to keep it linear. I'm trying to give it sense to it, but sometimes there is so much back and forth that
Mm.
it doesn't make sense. What is important is the final result that I get at the end of the day, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So don't be afraid of jumping from ZBrush to Keyshot, wherever you have to do. Get what you need, you know?
Totally. Before you get to this part and like
Yes.
you're doing those initial sketches, we had a question which was like, how many sketches do you normally do before you decide to like, I'm going into 3D?
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. That's a great question. It really depends on the client. Like I've been
Okay.
stuck on processes on jobs where we were sketching for weeks before even
Oh,
getting
wow.
to the final 3D. Because the thing is, like with this pipeline and these techniques, once you get to an approved sketch, as rough
Hmm.
as it can be, all the informations are there. What you're
Yeah.
doing then, making the 3D and rendering finally, is basically just making a pretty image with all the rest of the information, which is materials, which is textures,
Hmm.
which is a final look to how something will look in the final movie or show.
Hmm.
That's but when you solve the design, it's kind of like a puzzle. When you solve the design, you're almost there. You're almost to the finish line, and
Right.
you'll see the DVD again. When I get to the process, when I choose a sketch, I'm actually not autopilot by that time. I go to ZBrush and I'm just sculpting that. Like I don't have
Yeah.
to think too much. And look,
Yeah.
I use also different pipelines for different projects. Like if I'm doing creatures, I tend to rely a bit more in 3D,
Mm.
or unless I've done a sketch before. But I got also used to design directly in 3D, which is a great tool. But depends on what you're doing. And for things like these, designing directly in 3D for me would be too slow, but it is also a possibility. So I want you guys to know that too. So once you get to this point, I just do one flat render in Keyshot, bring it to Photoshop, and what I do is like I have this naked body. Let's have fun. Let's basically design our costume on this guy, and you'll see I have, of course, a brief of a character. I know already what type of character it is. It's a Superman type of character. Is the hero. I am highly inspired by Superman. It's like this kind of angelic form, this angelic superhero is, is all good, um, and it's called Paladin, and that also informs the design language I want to use. I want something very elegant, angelic, streamlined. So I'm thinking about all these things when I'm working, and I gather a ton of references. Um, I do look also at other artists that I love, of course, and try to learn from them. And but also what I suggest is look at nature, look at real life, because
Hmm.
that's the biggest teacher. Like you can never beat life. You can never beat nature. And like even in this case, in the DVD I'll show, I have a lot of tactical gears and even some shoes. Sometimes even just one detail of something can inspire you to create something unique. Like
Mm-hmm.
very inspired by some really um, sporty shoes and like the texture on the shoes or some lines. Like, oh my god, I can play with it. And then, this process now is very then becomes very artistic, because then it becomes what is your design language, what you can achieve, and a lot of things get come up from just pencil on paper. Like like some things I can't explain everything I'm doing. It just kind of flow out of myself, and they come
Mm-hmm.
up as soon as I go. And it's about decisions, and of course using design principles. So I will simply, like, with a flat, like, I love using this flat brush that I got from my mentor Jerry Morantz,
Mm-hmm.
where um sorry, I didn't post the tablet very well, but so you just start drawing, and like now you're drawing on top of something with this really, like, I love this brush, but you can use any brush. I have a ton of brushes here that you can use, but I keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
um and basically you, on a flat layer, start drawing, and you start drawing on top and try to figure out the design. And like, I'm not precious about it, I'm not precious
Mm-hmm.
about things. I can cut into my forms, I can um pick colors from the body and color back up. Or what you can do is also keep a line, like whatever process works for you also in drawings. Sometimes I tend to jump into color right away. Sometimes because I like more of a painterly approach. Sometimes I just stick to line drawing, and then I color underneath. It all depends what you're doing. But when you're doing with you're going with this process, you'll end up with something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at least for me, that it looks like this. And for this, in this case, I started using colors right away, because it helped me, since the design, I needed the design to be very graphic and simple. Color was a big
Yeah.
design element, so I
Especially
wanted,
for superheroes. Yeah.
especially for superheroes, guys, like, when I'm working also at this stage, I don't really zoom in too much. I keep it at this distance, and I try to see the big picture. Sometimes I even zoom out even more to see,
Mm-hmm.
is he gonna be really readable? Is he gonna be um, visible from far away? Are people gonna be able to identify him? Oh, he's the hero. That's Paladin. He's
Mm-hmm.
flying around. He's fighting a bad guy. Um, so color was a big choices in this design. And as you can see, I end up at the end following this design, but I created also in the DVD, I created also this other version. Also, because what happened, guys, in this process, you have a lot of ideas in your mind that you have. It's kind of like a laundry list of things that you want to try, and like you
Mm-hmm.
feel like one version you haven't tried everything. Like this version, I was trying to have something different color wise, not the kind of like a twist to the classic color scheme of blue and red. But so I tried a twist to the blue, a twist to the red. But also, like, what if I tried something a bit more serious, a bit more dark, toned down, and
Mm-hmm.
with elements that are a bit different? Like, I wanted to explore a bit different shapes, and that's why painting is so powerful, guys, because you can start even like on top of your version that you like, and like basically start creating new versions and simply going in, sketching new design lines. And like, look, doing this process in 2D is so fast. Like, I
Yeah.
can explore colors um, very simply. Like, if the client wants to see different colors, I can easily do that. In 3D, it will take me a bit longer to do that. So that's why um, it's so powerful to use this process, at least for myself. And I found it very rewarding. I got to the process of some designs where, like, it's week of exploring things, and like you actually feel good about being in 2D, because 3D sometimes can be a bit overwhelming on yourself. Like, you need to
Mm-hmm.
model everything. I'm like,
Yeah.
damn, like, what if that shape doesn't work? So now I'm free to explore that shape here and make mistakes, because that's you are gonna be making mistakes. You're gonna make lines that you don't like. You're gonna start having design elements that don't really go with the character. Like, oh, maybe things don't flow very well. Like, I can see the big picture here, and see, I have a hint of what I want to do with some textures, but that's like down the line, like, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
really worried about that much right now. But it's important to know what you're doing, where you want to go with it. um I don't know if there's any questions about this process. I think it's pretty straightforward, you know
Yeah. I mean, I like that you're doing it in 2D. Like you're using 3D to get to your 2D phase quickly. And I think a lot of people, but then your process is then that you're going from then to 2D, then back to 3D to kind of finalize it, which is cool. I think a lot of people think that like the traditional way of or no, what I guess is the common 3D workflow is maybe I do a quick sketch, then I just jump into 3D the whole time, and then I'm done. Like that's how a lot of people, even myself, tend to do it. But you're kind of saying like I know that I can explore a lot of ideas here. I want to explore some ideas, but I'm going to use the 3D element of that to get me to the place where what I'm painting on, what I'm resolving on is a much stronger base than
Basically.
nothing.
Yeah, basically, like it definitely helps because you of course, because I've done concepts where I started directly just drawing the figure as well. But
Mm-hmm.
what also helps me with this process is that once I know that you like a client likes this design, I know I can achieve this image right away because I have that pose, I have that character right there, I have those proportions.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of sculpting that on top of that body. So it also came to from a point of like, how do I make the process faster? Because sometimes
Mm.
you're drawing something and then they want to change it and then go back to 3D and try to match your 2D, and it's never going to be the same. So this process
Mm-hmm.
also allows me to be consistent in what I'm delivering. And I think it's very important as a concept artist to deliver consistency because clients can also fall in love with a sketch or an
Yeah.
initial idea. And then maybe when you start doing it in 3D and think about, if I drew this now, I'm going to do 3D, starting from scratch another day. I need to match perfectly what I've done because that's what they expect, really. Uh, If you're doing these are the proportions, you better deliver that in the final painting. Otherwise, people be like, "Why is this
Why doesn't it look the
different?
same?
Why doesn't it look
Yeah.
the same? Why is it different?" So this allows you to stay on course, have big solid bases, as you say, to work on, explore your design, and also just focus on the hard part, which is the design. That's why again we
Yeah.
use the software guys to focus on the hard part, which is the design. I feel like a lot of people can get to this level, to this point, right? You can get to the point of having a 3D base. You can buy scans. Like people can do a lot of
Yeah.
things to get to a good base, and Keyshot makes things look really cool with just some simple materials. But what differentiates things is like, what are your actual ideas? What are your designs?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the choices you're gonna make.
Yeah. I think superheroes are a good example of that because they, the bulk of them are just anatomy. This something that separates superheroes is the design within the anatomy. If you look at most of them, even most male and female superheroes, they're just very skin tight spandex. But
Yeah,
it's
that's a
all the
great point.
design within that
That's
makes
a
them
really
different.
great point. And like, you're working with a human figure that we all
Hmm.
know that's what it is. And people, of course, are different. They look different, but you're
Sure.
working with the same type of parameters. Like, so. Yeah, that's a great point. That's a really good point.
So
So,
after you go from this,
mhm. Yeah.
what's the next
So
step?
next step, of course, will be you present these to the client as many versions as you're gonna do.
Hmm.
There could be some back and forth and rework the sketches. So in fact, what I do also in the DVDs too, I want to show you guys. I also explore um, some colors. Like when I get to the point where I like one, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, am I doing all the right choices? Let me explore also if these are the right colors and the right ideas. I like the design language. Let me see. So that's what I did here. And of course, I was like, oh, what if I go for a darker blue? What if I go for a
Mm-hmm.
purple? That didn't work. What if I invert the colors? Let me go more
Mm-hmm.
classic, a brighter red and stuff. And these can also stay just with you if you don't show this to the client. But this proves to you that my choices were spot on number one. Like, okay,
Sure.
this is my right choice. Because,
Yeah.
again, we're trying to be very efficient on our choices and make sure we are doing the right choices. You don't want to go to 3D and realize, I should have done those boots. I should have
Yeah.
done that
Yeah.
emblem. The other one was better. So anything you can do beforehand, it will make your pipeline smoother. And again, in Photoshop, doing all these changes with colors, so easy. Again, starting from the same base, as you can see, it's just some color changes and color
Hmm.
layers. You get different options. And okay, I like number one. So now I'm ready to go back to 3D. The client likes it. For the sake of the tutorial, I didn't do a back view. Even if he has a cape, I do sculpt and kind of finish the back view, the cape at the back, but I don't really explore it too much because sometimes they will people will ask you to do a front view, back view. You have to fully resolve a design. That's why also
Yeah.
3D is helpful, because you
Mm-hmm.
can resolve things in three dimension much easier.
Yeah.
Sometimes working 2D, then you go to the back, you draw a back, and like things don't match, don't align. And like on Jupiter's Legacy, we had a great team, and we were doing really intricate designs, and like I also was helping them putting making them in 3D, because a lot of things were in 2D, and like we had to make sure that the lines were flowing around the bodies correctly. And
Mm-hmm.
something that can happen too, guys, is that you might receive a scan of the actor's body to work with,
Mm.
and the client wants you to work directly on the body of the actual actor, and that um, make sh- to make sure that your design actually flows correctly
The
on the
person, yeah.
correct body, on the correct person. Yeah. So once I get to this point, I am ready to basically go back to 3D. So basically, I start sculpting the car. I'm going to show you two stages of the sculpting
Okay.
process. I'm opening ZBrush here. There we go. So this is one of the initial steps here. As you can see, I had the model from DAZ. I have it here, and basically what I'm doing is just doing the design in three dimension. And as you can
Mm-hmm.
see, I have something for the back, but I don't fully resolve it.
I like
Um,
that back though.
oh,
Looks
thank you,
cool.
thank you. Yeah, and even thinking about in design,
Mm-hmm.
guys, you have to think about layers of things. Even if this guy is covered by a cape, he's gonna be flying. This cape is gonna be moving. You need to
Yeah.
design also what's underneath. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you need to fully design something, especially if it's gonna be made practical. I had great experience on Supergirl, Stargirl, and Titans, where I was actually working the department while the cut fitters were actually making the costumes, and that was such a great experience, because I will do a drawing, I'll do design, then the ladies were making it over there, and they'll come to me and ask questions, and like I even got the chance to draw on top of fabric, because they were like,
That's
"Oh,
cool.
look, we we need to change some seam lines here. How will you solve the back?" And you will draw
Mm.
on top, and it's such a collaborative process. Because guys, let's not forget, like if we're working on characters, most of the times these things, sure, it could be a 3D, could be a CG character, but most of the times we're building these things for real, on real
Yeah.
people. So even having that experience of making seeing things in reality and how things can be made in reality will teach you your design will change your design process and your designs. um, so you can see when I get to this process, basically I'm redrawing my design on top of the model, and it's basically just some quick poly paint, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go with simple just cutting lines into the model to really make those. You're basically creating a fake idea of three dimension on the form. So, and I do extract some pieces. So when I get to the emblem and these white pieces, as you can see, I sketch them on top. Guys, be
Mm-hmm.
very artistic. Sketch things on top. Like you're just using color, and it's already the design can already come together
Yeah.
really quickly. Just with colors, it's crazy. And then you can go in and sculpt after that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but you can see the symmetry is working already, and it's
Mm-hmm.
making my life easier. Um, but so then you get from this process to then the finished model, which it's loading now, where it has a bunch more details in it, and I have all these extracted forms, and I show in the DVD how my quick process of extracting things to make them raised from the body in 3 dimensional, because you can fake it as much as you can into one model, but some things, especially if you're rendering in different materials, you want them to be actually 3 dimensional. So as you can see, all these the emblem and all these 3 dimensional parts are actual extracted
Mm-hmm.
pieces that I've extracted from the body, and then you can see how you can integrate things into the design and make you now when
Yeah.
you get to this stage, you're really taking the sketch, elevating it, and really getting to the functionality of things. And when I get to this process too, I start to find other design elements, other details that I didn't necessarily have into the sketch, and things of that nature. And as you can see here, I'm not worried about things being broken. I'm not worried about things, these are legs are separated from the chest. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. You're doing 2D. If there is any intersection, I can easily, like these, the very this imperfection here, of the intersection of the two model, easily fixable in 2D in Photoshop.
Yeah.
I won't even worry. The face, I don't even touch the face again. Um, and this is still my proxy cape I created just as a base, but then I'll show you guys my process of creating a cape in Marvelous, which is really easy. It's very rewarding because everything starts to flow so well. So if let me see if I can open the model with the cape finished, because it's I use Marvelous very simply, and I use Marvelous, guys. Again, use the softwares for everything you need. I've used
Hmm.
Marvelous for, like, I do a lot of concepts for uh, wounds and practical effects, and, like, let's say like a chest is split open, or um, skin needs to be warped and
Yeah.
moved. I actually use Marvelous for stuff like that. You use
Wow.
because you don't have to think about the software just for, oh, it's meant for pieces of cloth. Like, no, this
Hmm.
software is the capability um the dynamics in the software are so strong, and it's the capability
Hmm.
of moving things around and folding things that would be super hard to do in any other software. Why not using for practical effects for
Interesting.
skin,
Yeah.
open skin? I got so many great results of, like, a lot of things I had to do for Westworlds were wounds and skin open where you can see the robot inside. I was creating all those effects in Marvelous because I
Hmm.
was able to have pieces of cloth float and pull them the way I wanted, and it looked like skin. And with
Yeah.
minor ZBrush changes, you get something that looks perfect. And I'm like, damn, that took me 10 minutes. I didn't have to resculpt it, and
Yeah.
and and you feel also happy. It's like, oh, I'm going away from the boundaries of the softwares. I'm in control. I'm the
Hmm.
artist. The software is just a tool. It's just another brush that I'm using the way I need, and it's giving me what I need. And in this case, see Marvel's, and I do a lot of ZBrush cleaning and resculpting on the mod
Hmm.
on the cape. But you can see how I'm getting such a realistic base.
Yeah.
Especially because this cape, I was thinking of having it as a three-piece cape where two pieces are floating on top of one, and Marvel is so great at having those pieces integrate with each other, and I was able to create the negative space in there. And I know that it actually is going to be able to we're going to be able to achieve this cape in reality because of the dynamics of Marvelous that lets you do something with gravity, something with realistic movement of cloth, and um, cloth interacting with each other realistically. And that, I think, is very gets very valuable because I had again on Titans or Stargirl, I had a lot of caped characters, and there
Hmm.
were specific weight of the cloth of the, like, there was a cape from the older superhero that then get passed to the younger superhero, but it needs to
Hmm.
be the same cape, and it needs to float differently on different bodies. And what I was able to do with Marvel is that I create a cape for the main guy, the same size, then I create the younger kid, and I take the cape, put it on the kid, and he's gonna float on the kid. And it
Hmm.
gave me the realistic weight, it gave me the realistic folds, and, like, I was able to wrap the cape around the arm, and, like, and
Hmm.
now we know that in reality we'll build the cape for the adult, and
Yeah.
we can take the same thing, put it on the kid, and it's gonna look good.
That's cool.
So yeah,
That's really cool.
all that process helps you also with thinking about what is the final result. We're not just doing an image. We also have to think about this design needs to be built.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. That's cool.
yeah. So any questions in the meantime? Let's
Yeah, we had
see.
a couple people ask a couple quick things. One was you had mentioned about creatures starting in 3D versus 2D. Well, I guess the general question is like, why would you start in 3D with a creature instead of 2D?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think it's a personal preference of me
Hmm.
being used to use a lot of 3D, and I feel like at some point I became more of a sculptor than a painter. For some reason, I felt very comfortable in 3D, and when I'm talking about creatures, I feel like I can explore so much more in 3D. And guys, this is just a personal preference, but in the last shows I've been doing, I actually explored more into the even the creature side.
Hmm.
um, but it also depends what you're doing. For example, if I was doing a makeup, so basically like a creature that needs to be made on the top of a human form, I will use 3D for that because I can start from a human head and
Right.
sculpt and make sure that I stay in those proportions. And so again, thinking about where you have to do.
Yeah.
Also, 3D helps with the bigger type of creatures because you can get the right scale of things. You can
Mm-hmm.
and ZBrush is so great of like even just inserting things very quickly. Let's say you're doing a big tentacle. It's so easy to do in 3D in ZBrush that I don't have to
Mm-hmm.
draw the tentacle over and over again. I can actually do one tentacle, duplicate it, move it around, and create more things out of that.
Yeah, for sure. Another question came about hard surface modeling and sculpting. Do you do most of your hard surface stuff pieces in ZBrush, or do you ever go back to Maya or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been more and more in staying in ZBrush as much as I can just to streamline my pipeline. But actually, what I've done, another pipeline for heavily hard surface characters, I actually tend to start in ZBrush. I rough things out,
Mm-hmm.
rough something out, then I actually go to Topogun, which
Mm,
is a retopologizing software that allows you to clean up the model and have really clean shapes, main shapes. And Topogun is fantastic because what it allows you to do is to have really high resolution model inside the software. So I don't have to retopo, I don't have to decimate. I just send it over there. Um, I can basically retopo the selected area of the metal piece I want, and then I
mm,
usually go to Maya and extrude it. I can create some bevels because with my hard surface, I want something very clean.
yeah.
So I do that process. But nowadays, I'm also staying more and more in ZBrush because there is a lot of clipping tools, really good clipping
Yeah.
tools, and you can actually achieve some really clean forms. In ZBrush, but it
Yeah.
depends what I'm doing. If I'm doing some weaponry and stuff, I do still rely on polygonal modeling a lot because it
Mm-hmm.
just I mean also because I was used to it for so long. I did the sculpted faces in polygonal modeling back in the day. it
Right.
it gives me that control of each edge and sharpness of it. But to
Yeah.
be honest, guys, look, if you get to the point where like if you're doing a character like this, an extraction of this, it's more than enough. And you'll see in the
Yeah, for
DVD how I
concept.
it's for concept, and you can
Yeah.
easily paint and fix these areas and fix the lines in painting, so you don't have to worry about too much. I could take an hour, make this piece in Maya nice and
Yeah.
perfectly with the right topo. Is that necessary? Not really for
Not
what I'm
no.
doing,
No. Yeah.
unless it's a big piece that is very centerpiece. Like if you go look, guys, at my robot, for example, for Stargirl, I was able to do stripe, and that I had a specific idea about the logo on the chest. I wanted it to
Mm-hmm.
look like a car logo. That I had
Mm-hmm.
to do in Maya. There was no
Mm-hmm.
other way for me to do it in ZBrush to make it as sharp. And honestly, when you get used to software, I did that in Maya in 10 minutes too. It's just simple
Yeah.
shapes. I keep it very simple for myself. I'm not gonna even if I have to break some topology in Maya, I do that too. I'm not really worried about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yes.
So once you got this, I assume you go to Keyshot and you start painting.
You go to Keyshot and like I won't bother you guys with all that process.
Yeah.
Like in
Yeah.
the DVD, you can see how I you can easily throw this into Keyshot with one button. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
so easy. Like like back in the
The
day,
bridge. Yeah.
with Bridge now, you can just go under external rendering, activate Keyshot, and then BPR.
And you're done.
See
Yeah.
what happens now. I just send it. I don't retopo. I don't
Mm-hmm.
decimate anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you gotta be careful how heavy your model gets. But look how
Sure.
quickly I'm just in another software now. It's
Yeah,
like
you're already there.
it's loading. But back in the day, guys, before the bridge, I was exporting each subtool and re-importing it into.
It was
Uh,
brutal. Yeah.
it was really brutal. And what will happen too is like, what if you don't like the pose? What if you did something
Yeah.
wrong? You had
Yeah.
re-exported out again, and now I have the model in here. I can do all my rendering.
And
Um,
you didn't have to do any UVs or anything either, which is the great part about it.
yeah,
It's just
no
it just
UVs.
comes across.
It comes
Yeah,
across
there you
right
go.
away, and like the quickness of even keeping the poly paint. Like let's
Mm-hmm.
say I use a lot just very simple materials. Like the letter gray. If you hold Alt and drag, it's gonna keep the textures as you have, which is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Before I actually had to export texture maps, re-import them in Keyshot. The process was so hard, and guys, mind you, like when you're doing this process, I got 2 3 days for a concept, no more. Like if I'm lucky, three
Right.
days, you know. So you have
Yeah.
to be really quick. And I show in the DVD how I explore a lot of texturings in Keyshot. Like that's part of my pipeline where like if I don't have to, I don't even worry about going to ZBrush and like try to use half fuzz to texture this model, because you can see that if the model is a bit broken in some areas because I pushed it too much, you might end up with a lot of stretchiness, and the textures are not going to come out the way you want them. So the fact that you can do that in Keyshot, and Keyshot has so many great options here to basically warp something around it. Like there is even textures you can use here. If you go under textures here, let's
Mm-hmm.
see, you want this bump, you put it on the bump, and it's going to apply to your model. And you have all these mapping types that you can go through. If you have UVs, you can use UV too. And like
Mm-hmm.
honestly, there is, if you don't work too destructively, you can retain the UVs from your DADS model, and that will help you
Mm.
tremendously.
Mm.
But you can change the scale of things. Like look how quickly you can get to like some surface details. Like now I probably made it too small. Oh, actually, it's coming through. Uh, but very quickly, like you use the softwares to your advantage
Yeah, there you
again.
go.
And I show in the DVD how I actually make my own patterns because I
Oh,
wanted this
cool.
to be very unique. So I'll just simply do in Photoshop quick patterns, and then you try them because I don't know if they're really gonna work the way I want it. And like sometimes you get lucky, and sometimes you get some happy accidents. You can play with the bump weight, and like I show process of also how I use different materials with different settings to get specular passes out of these, and have even more control on your bumps or your reflections and your textures. um, Use really the software to your advantage, and there is it's such a great tool, Keyshot, guys. And you can it uses HDRIs, which make everything easier and
Mm-hmm.
more intuitive. I like using the older version of Keyshot as well, because there is some maps I show into the DVD where I'm so stuck with using some HDRIs because I like the looks they give me. And you can go online on HDRI even and download all the HDRIs you want, but really you will find your own way. You'll find you guys your own
Yep.
voice, you know. And once you get to
Absolutely.
this point, you can see how it's looking already great, and it's a good base to work from. And from this process on, then I'll show you another breakdown because I want to show you a breakdown of another character for that part. But you can see that then I went from the sketch. I ended up, going to the final image that is basically this one,
Mm-hmm.
where I have all the textures, I have all the material information, and I show you guys in the DVD how to get all these nice textures that actually blend together, and how to do that, and how to think about different surfaces. And like this is part of the design. Even the texturing
Mm-hmm.
is an integral part of the design, because you want to have areas of rest, areas of tight details, areas that you have more reflectivity, less reflectivity, and that is informing all your design choices. And I show also how I use some photographic elements, not much on this one. Depending on what I'm doing, I can do a lot of photo bashing as well.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely do a lot of photo bashing for the face, and I show an interesting process of how you take that DAS model and you retexture it basically in Photoshop, you repaint it and make a unique face. Like this is not a face of a guy that I kind of took and just put there. It's a blend of different faces because you want to be unique also sometimes when you're doing these type of characters.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Um,
I would love to talk about Unreal at some point. We've already been chatting for an hour. I want to give us time for that as well.
let,
We did, as you load up whatever, if you wanted to load up anything,
yep.
um, there was a question that came in. So as you're doing that, I'll ask that.
Mhm.
We got two. One was for character design, where do you get your inspiration or ideas for suit designs?
That's a great question. As I said, I do look, of course, at the artists that I like and what they're doing,
Hmm.
but I also focus mainly on existing things. And it could really, the inspiration, guys, can come from anything. Like I can look at a shoe detail and
Yeah.
have an idea out of it. I can open up a book and be inspired by by wherever. Oh, it's opening. By wherever little details really inspires me for shapes and stuff. So I will say look at a lot of things. Look at a lot of how things are built.
Hmm.
Looks at a lot of details. Me close my Keyshot. I think that's what's kind of killing my computer.
Yeah, as soon as you start opening like 30
Yeah,
files, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, things get slow.
Unreal and then Keyshot. It's a
Yeah,
lot on the computer.
they
So
start competing.
look at a lot of real things, guys. For street designs, look at what they're doing with the sneaker tech. Look what the
Yeah,
Nike is doing. Look what Adidas is doing. Look at what um, real costumes look like and what they're doing.
yeah,
Also, because that guys will teach you why some choices are made into design, because you have to think about how practical it is. How you have to let people be able to move. That part need to be taught about. So you need flexible areas. That all this that stuff you can learn from
hmm,
designs that exist out there, and why Nike builds the things they're building and what the technology is going. Because now with the 3D printing, there is the possibilities of what you can do is so much bigger. Like for example, guys, like what I'm doing here, what I did here, this is a knitting that you can do in 3D in with 3D printing. And
yep,
I that's what we were doing on Jupiter's Legacy. We had such a advanced printing of the costumes that most materials were actually printed with the pattern in mind of how pattern is how you create something in real life, and then the front of the jacket, the back of the jacket gets put together,
hmm,
and now it's a three-dimensional object. Basically, what kind of Marvelous does,
yeah,
we could 3D print these details already on the fabric, and it's so crazy. That's how basically they made the Black Panther suit. It's
yeah,
with all these details printed on the actual fabrics, and things got glued on top. But like elements like these, if you didn't have 3D printing, you will have to sculpt that by hand,
yeah,
um, and it took forever. But knowing that I can achieve these, because it's easy for us to do in Keyshot, it's easy for us to do in 2D in Paint, but you just
hmm,
have to think about it. Okay, how is this going to be achievable?
yeah.
And knowing that you can do this thing in 3D printing, learning from sneaker tech, you know that you can achieve these things.
Yeah, for sure. There was a question that came in, which you kind of answered in this, but somebody was saying by using Keyshot, can you then create a bunch of transferable libraries of maps, bump maps, etc., that you can pass on to modelers and other people in the pipeline, which you can. But as you kind of said, it's not just down the pipeline in CG. You can also pass that off to 3D printing, to costume design, to use the same maps that you're using for your illustrations and your models to do costumes and to because I've seen a lot of that stuff as well, where the designs that you're making, the costume team, they need to make that as well. They need to replicate that as well.
Yeah, and the more information you give them, and like having the patterns, and like um, character like Shiv on Stargirl, I was able, to give the model the patterns. And
Hmm.
honestly, guys, like with all the 3D printing we were doing, after 3 days of me having the after basically 3 days of having the concept approved, we were feeding the actors already with 3D
Hmm.
printing the prototypes of my, and it was, of course, it was my model, so they weren't clean, they weren't
Sure.
perfect, but they were prototypes that you could fit on the person, make sure they're fitting right and they're the right proportions. And it's crazy how fast you can get from page to see a real person in front of you wearing that, and it's creepy and it's
It's pretty
amazing.
cool though. Yeah, it's super
Yeah,
cool to see that happen where it's like this was on a page days ago. This was
yeah.
on a screen days ago and now it's a real thing.
It's a person. You talk to them, they're wearing it. um, and the fact that that's why most concept artists nowadays, they do have to know 3D.
Hmm.
Of course, there is amazing paintings. Justin Sweet, it's amazing. I mean, of
Sure.
course, he uses 3D as well, but
He does too,
his
yeah.
painting, he does everything, but his painting
Hmm.
is so amazing. It doesn't
Yeah.
need 3D. But what happens is that the more valuable I feel, the more valuable you make to yourself to production. It allows me to be on the job longer. It allows me
Hmm.
to carry the design through the final process. Because if you think about before, I'll do a 2D, get that approved. They need to pass you someone else to sculpt it. Things can
Hmm.
change. You ensure you with your pipeline, like using this pipeline, you're ensuring your client that you're delivering that, and they're gonna get that, and you're streamlining the entire process. The client will be very happy with you.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
it makes it way more valuable. the more tools you know, guys, please learn them. Learn as much as you can. And
Mm-hmm.
you'll see the DVD. I also make a bit. The background is mostly 2D, but tidying these up with Unreal, and what I'm doing with Unreal, it's because now I can actually be able to uh, do more three-dimensional environments faster that I wasn't able to
Mm-hmm.
do before. Because before I would use Maya, it was slow, and like if I'm doing this character like this, I was not going to model a background, for
Yeah.
an image. I just did it
Yeah.
in 2D, paint, photos, blurriness, wherever it's not the focal point. But how fast Unreal is in getting you places, I'm starting to use that also with my characters and I approached Unreal because I don't only do characters, I don't only do costumes, creatures, but I also have to do a lot of keyframes.
Mm-hmm.
And keyframes are very, very hard. And the more
Yes.
tools you have to help you, because the time doesn't change, they give you 3 days, 4 days for it. So the more tools you have to help you and get to the final uh, solid images. Like for example, one of the frustrations I had was that I had to do a show I was on. I had to do a lot of foliage and a lot of greens. It's very hard to achieve it. But even if you do painting and photo
Yeah.
bashing, it's hard to achieve the result you want and the lighting you want. When I started learning Unreal and I started to see what people were doing in Unreal, that opened up a world for me of
Mm-hmm.
possibilities and like being able to really improve my visuals and
Yeah. Absolutely. I remember seeing a couple of your pieces. Has it happened to load yet? Can we take a look?
yeah, let's take. Actually
Let's take a look.
showing a
Unreal.
new. I want to show you a new one that I've been
Ooh,
working on.
yes.
So let's see. I want to talk about that. Let me hide the landscape. Let me hide the water because that I ended up changing. That's part of the process where this started
Mm-hmm.
as a hut in a swamp,
Yeah.
and then now it became like, oh, I actually want this to float in the sky and
Mm-hmm.
be outside. So this is like I'm exploring, guys, more environmental stuff nowadays. This is not my strong suit. I'm trying to get better and better at it, and I think Unreal has been the software is helping me a lot with it.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of keyframes in the past of some shows where I explored a lot of keyframes, and I use again the same process: ZBrush, Maya, Keyshot. But what I can do here, it's just so much better.
Mm.
And why the first of Josh, this we're not rendering. We are ready.
Yeah, that's the best part. Real time.
We are in real time. We are getting all that we need in real time. And I got into Unreal 5 because of Lumen and because of the global illumination that is
It's
real
insane.
time. Isn't it? Is it
It's
crazy?
insane. Yeah, I remember you posted I think your first image or something, and I was just like, it's legit. Like it's super the real time part of Lumen for concept art for me as well has been something where I'm like, this is opening up the options for what you can do so much faster.
It's unbelievable. So this thing, for example, it was a concept evolved with the time of
Hmm.
I've used of course my elements like the cool thing also of Unreal is that gives you a giant library, as you all guys know,
Sure.
of the Quixel library. See if I can open it here, where like they have tons of things coming out all the time,
Hmm.
and it's so easy to use. Drag and drop is free, and I feel like this is such a great, you have 3D assets, you have surfaces,
Hmm.
you can find anything in here. But is what's more exciting to me is like, look, I will never just take a piece and use it as it is because
Hmm.
it defeats purpose of me doing concept. But for
Hmm.
example, if I give you an example of going in here, the windows here, there were parts of another window that I cropped and cut and repurposed from one of the scans
Yeah.
and made that out of it. The roof, for example, this was another element that I basically remade from. See if I move it. Sure, it's not helping me. Oh, yeah. Oh, I think it's down there. Yeah, so you can see it
Oh,
was
there's like a
like a
big piece in there. Is that a
yeah, it's big.
birdhouse?
Yeah, it's like it was a bird, like it's this Chinese birdhouse. I'm like, oh, I can actually use some of these
Yeah,
elements,
the top of that.
and
Yeah.
the top of that, you put it there, boom, you have a new roof of a house. Like
Hmm.
thinking this way, you can get a lot of elements also on the Unreal Marketplace, which are really great. For
Hmm.
example, this was a piece of a floor that I repurposed, and
Hmm.
I made a wall out of it. Like the uh, this is another piece of a scan that like I just basically placed there, and now it becomes like a piece of a roof.
Yep.
And like one thing I love too is basically the wood panel scans they give you. Like if I don't
Yeah, those
forget
are
this,
great.
these are so good. And like let's be honest, guys, who cares? Look, in the past I've sculpted all these things and like textured them myself, but as a concept and being fast, nobody's gonna judge you that you're not sculpting your own rock. To be honest, it's what you do
Yeah.
with that
A
rock that
wood
will
plank.
a
Yeah.
wood plank. It's what you will do with it that it makes the difference, and you can see how quick. This is not even tasking on my computer. This is like, and
Right.
with the nanite option where you can make something not really heavy on your mesh on your machine, it's such a game changer. And you can see how I can take elements like these and like this hut over here. I build it out of just wooden elements
Hmm.
from the scan library. That and the cool thing is that I can.
From a mix of Megascans, or did you also do Marketplace for
Oh
most
no,
of
this
it,
is
or?
yeah. There is a some marketplace in here too, but it's mostly mega scans. Like all these pieces here, it's a mega
Hmm.
scan piece, one on top of
Hmm.
the other. Replace the color, change things around, and I also know that when I get to painting, I can change some things.
Yeah.
Um, like for example, this was a base of something that I squashed and moved around, and now it becomes my panel here.
Yeah.
Like that's so powerful. Like for example, here I was developing the idea. Was like, oh, there's a parking meter in the sky. So what I did is like
Hmm.
I took a wooden post for something else, cut it, cropped it. I changed the textures a little bit because that's another cool thing of what Unreal can let you do. You can easily go into the models, change in software the textures. You can make them darker. You can color them. You can change the hues. You can
Hmm.
use the Quixel mixer to retexture something and make it your own. And then, for example, I went in there, grabbed a scan of a parking meter. I was like, I only need this label, and
Yeah.
like you can go in and cut a piece. You see that you can still see the tube. You
Yeah.
cut the
Of
piece
where
that
it
you
was.
need. You put it there. You don't see the tube anymore. Now it looks like a post is as a rope around it,
Yeah.
and like
Yep.
and you get what you
What are
need.
you
For example,
using to cut those pieces? Like a tube. How did you cut the tube?
oh yeah.
The
So for
modeling
example,
tool then?
if I yeah, so that's the thing I've also like I was defensive about using Unreal, and I started learning Blender more, and I was doing the same
Hmm.
process I'm doing here in Blender.
Yeah.
Um, but and I had a subscription to use the library because if you use it in Blender, you need a
Yeah.
subscription.
Hmm.
Um, but and I was attracted by Blender because I could modify things more.
Sure.
Watching all what Jama Jurabev was doing with him,
Sure.
with his tools and stuff. But then when I discovered that Unreal 5 is actually integrating, guys, modeling tools, not even like modeling, but for now they're editing tools, let's say. I think
Hmm.
that would be a better way to put it. You can edit things, you can change the pivot of things, you can warp things in software. And like, let's say this element, I only want the top of this post. You can go in here and let's see where it is. Poly modeling, subdivision, polycut. You can start cutting your model
Mm.
with planes. With actually, I should use the plane cut. For example, a plane cut, it gives you a plane that
Hmm.
you can use to cut
Oh, there
things
you go.
around. And then we go, you see based on the plane that you're
I didn't
cutting.
know that was a tool. I'll be using that all the time now.
Oh, and man, this tool is so good. And
And it's keeping
see,
the texture.
it's keeping the texture, right? Like
Yeah, that's
this is
key.
genius. It's key
Hmm.
because now, and of course, guys, also really quickly, you can grab a texture from something else and throw it on this wood post.
Yeah.
You're not stuck with this wood material. You can use whatever you
Hmm.
want. Scan library
Yep.
also gives you wood planes and
All those surfaces, you can put those on there. Make it jade,
right.
make it rock, whatever you want.
Yeah. For example, like if I want to show you the example of what I was using, like I did the boat in ZBrush. This is my boat. I made the
Hmm.
boat. I basically designed it in ZBrush and I exported it again. That was one thing I needed to figure out how to get your own elements in it, and it's fairly simple, guys. The only thing I'm still figuring out is how to separate one object having different materials on it. That's
Hmm.
something that needs to be worked that I need to work on. But I'm actually happy to because some things are going to take a little longer because this software is not meant for concept
Yeah.
and is meant to be very technical. and I just go away around the technical parts to get my concept going. So, for example, this in the case of this boat is made of different elements that I put together
Mhm.
that I then re-imported in Unreal from ZBrush, and I didn't even bother texturing anywhere else. What
Mhm.
you'll see here is that this texture, um, let me find the guy. These textures were basically just thrown on top of this model here. And
Mm.
what I did is I got a bunch of some scan data from of some wood from the Quixel library. I threw it on
Mhm.
top of my model, and I was able to um, get these results with moving textures around, changing the colors. You can do it directly in a reel. It's crazy how you don't even have to leave the software, and
Hmm.
you won't even be able to recognize the texture I used from the scan library because
Mhm.
I edited so much, and it gave me the, like, look at the paneling. Oh, actually, you know what I did here too is that you can take the textures from pieces of scans. So the scans don't have materials, but basically the scan have materials linked to the UVs.
Mhm.
But what I found out is like, yeah, but you can rewarp something around another mesh. So if you like this texture, like what's going on
Mhm.
here, you can grab these and put it on the boat, and it will wrap it around in certain ways. And with your painting tool, like you'll be able to um, fix some
Mhm.
areas
Clean
that
it up
will
later. Yeah.
clean it up. And for example, with this guy here, I just wanted something simple and rusty. So what I did, I had this element that had the rust already and the metal I wanted. So I gave the same material to the another piece, and boom, it just warped it around it
Mhm.
and gave me what I needed. And like very simply, look, the textures don't necessarily always make sense, but when I do the
Sure.
Photoshop, I clean all this up and perfect for concept.
Yeah, for sure.
It's so powerful. And what I've done with another scene I want to show you is that you can also create also some little animations, which I think will be the next step. Really, will be to
Yeah.
have your concept even moving around them a bit, because
Yeah.
I mean, look, you can. I put some
Even just
cloud,
that, even just a little push in or a
even
move
just a
or
little push in, like it just
yeah.
comes to life, and it
Yeah.
gives you a story. Because what I'm trying to do here is really storytelling. Like,
Mhm.
I have a house. Like, I want to imagine who's living in there. Like, how does he live? This is his energy source for the house. He's got plants.
Mhm.
Oh, and this was what I was talking about. How Unreal is powerful. I mean, look at
Yeah.
these flowers.
Yeah, they're great.
Like,
Yeah.
they're awesome. And what I did here, I took a wooden thing, put some cement element in it from
Right.
to make it like to the dirt, and then the leaves and stuff fit perfectly in there, and now you have
Mhm.
a vase outside of the balcony. How would I made the
Mhm.
balcony? Again, a wooden plank that I thought about making into that piece there. I got tubes from the scan libraries, and now I have tubes elements. All these elements here, wooden boxes, like it's all how you use these things. For example, this door step, this door here, it was, as you can see, is a door from another thing.
Yep.
Then when I integrate with other, like I changed the door, I changed the frame, and now I have a unique door. Um, it's it's so creative, and the possibilities it gives you to think outside the box. And there is mirroring tools, guys. There's retexturing tools. Really, I've in the other scene. Let's see if I then open the other one up. I even saw a little piece of a scan that I liked. That was like, oh, I can
Mhm.
use this piece and make something else out of it. And I made like there was a broken tile on a on a pillar, and I used it, and used just one area, made it bigger, and basically I had broken tiles from the ground, and it's just sort of wording how quick they came. And the lighting, guys, this
The
is like an
lighting's crazy. Yeah.
external. The lighting is crazy. So let me open up. I
Are
stop.
you using just the basic lighting, like the basic? Or
For
using
this
anything
one, yeah,
fancy?
like I basically imposted
Yeah.
this regular sun, but there's so many more things you can use, guys, to get more realistic lighting. I was watching your live where you use the physical sky and light.
Mm. Yeah, I've been trying that one.
It's great, that one too. And again, once you get the Photoshop, now I'm actually on this image in the phase of photoshopping, and
Oh, cool.
once you get a Photoshop, you can do so much more. But for example, for interiors, and I'm sorry if I'm ranting a bit. I get really
No
excited
worries.
about.
While you load that up, I'm
Unreal.
going to answer a question from the chat.
Yes.
Somebody was asking, what kind of PC do you need to learn the basics of VFX and 3D? If you're a beginner, I would just recommend anything off the shelf. If you're a beginner, don't invest crazy in your PC, especially if you're going to do ZBrush or Blender as things to start. Any gaming PC off of the shelf will be perfectly fine for you. One question for you, which was, how
Yes.
long have you been doing this? And what was your first film or game that you did concept for?
Oh, great question. I've been doing this for at least 11 years. Um, I My first project was, so basically I it was such a Hollywood story in a way where like I was doing some work for a Gnomon for myself, and I was doing these portraits. Like again coming from the fine art background, I loved always doing portraits, but I started doing portraits now not of people now like we do in Italy, but of creatures. And at this
Mm-hmm.
rat man that got me to work at Aaron Sims company, where because
Mm.
they were doing Jupiter's Ascending at that time, and between so Jupiter Ascending and Edge of Tomorrow were my first
Oh
shows
yeah.
that I worked on, and yeah, I basically got in the door just by one artwork. And I always tell guys like one artwork can change your life. Like one artwork, it was what they were
Yeah.
looking for. They were like, "Can you do this again?" And I didn't know if I could. I was fresh out of school, you know.
You're like,
I
yeah,
was like, "Yeah."
sure.
I was panicking. If some of my idols were in the room, you know, like Jared
Yeah.
Marantz was right next to me, and I was
Yeah.
in his class, you know, and like
Yeah.
I was so scared. I wanted, and I didn't know if I could make it or not. But at the end, it worked out.
That's awesome.
So this one is the first scene I did. So now it's in unlit mode because it
Mm-hmm.
blows my mind every time you go from this mode to lit
Yeah.
and and see what happens. Boom!
Mm-hmm.
Like
It's
it's
that
so
fast.
crazy and fast. And look how quick I'm moving into my
Yeah.
scene. So
Yeah.
now here you can see like I'm treating these. So now this is an interior. If I go outside, you can see my setup. I have a lot of mist and haze because
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to have some really nice God rays coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see it looks like an actual set because guys,
Yeah.
we're doing concept. I don't
Yeah.
care about if outside looks shitty. I'm doing
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
based on images, right? So what I did here, when you go in, you got the lighting you want. And
Mm-hmm.
again, so there is rubbles elements. Oh, so this is my fog card. Let's see if I can grab my. You
You
can
like
see how
fog
you can.
cards.
Yeah, there's a fog card that's standing in the front. You can see like this is a rubble element that came in like this. I'm like, oh, I can actually make something out of it. Squash it on the ground, put something on like how amazing this software is in, and like to see how even I have the smoke element moving. I mean, that's so
Mm-hmm.
powerful. Like this could be a concept moving on its own, and I was able to achieve like a light that flickers and like
Mm-hmm.
just with a simple cylinder in it. And this is like a lamp from the scan that I reworked. I made a door out of the wood planks and so easy to do make walls and everything like
Mm-hmm.
look at these tiles basically like if I lift them up these are like these, but then when I integrate with the other things I'm doing, for example, this is what I was talking about here. I wanted some really distressed tiles, so if I move this element up, this is a piece of a pillar from something else that
Mm.
I was able to see something in it, and then when I put it on the ground, it definitely looks like the tiles got pushed out of the ground. And then there is all these great noise elements that you can use to basically give those effects. And like guys, I was never be able to do grass like this and this
I was
fast.
gonna say, yeah, that you were talking about foliage. Foliage and grass and greenery is so difficult to paint, especially fast. But
It's
using the
such
foliage tools,
foliage tools, and now they're even scanning because these are
yeah.
actually the prototype scans for the
Oh,
trees.
that's the black alder set.
Yeah,
Is
the
that what it
black
is?
color set. Like, look how
Yeah.
great that looks, and look at this lighting, guys. You live having this lighting that it looks really amazing. Like it looks so good. Things it does feel like a video game. You're moving things around like a video game. Like
Yeah.
I can move like, look how the lighting in real time moves with what I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing, and there's nothing more artistic than this. Like instead of like when I did some scenes like these in Blender that I'll actually now have kind of abandoned, because every time I needed to see what was going on, I needed to kind of render it out. It was taking
Mm.
forever. But the fact that I can artistically go in and art direct my lighting in this scene, I
Yeah,
mean,
that
like, look, you
fast.
can that fast, like, and it doesn't matter to me that the element that I use now can also be just used as a shadow element.
Yeah.
Um, it is so powerful, and like how quick the lighting can be moved around, and the decals you
Hmm.
can use. Like for example, here I have this splatter of blood that is just like a
Hmm.
decal that you can move around and apply to things, and
Yeah,
see
you can
how
apply to
I'm
anything.
up to anything. And you see how I'm creating this scene like from the other side. I like this is one concept, and like as a set, now here I have another
Yeah,
concept
here's
that I can
another
make,
one.
and you can
That's
make
great.
so many versions of things. Like um, here again, this is an example of how creatively you want to use things. This was a table top
Mm.
of a metal
Mm.
tabletop that I chopped. I changed the textures to it. I already have a frame. Then I put it on. I put it in here, and now I put some paper elements on it, and
Hmm.
now it
It's a
looks
little
like
bored.
a board that tells you a story, because it's about, again, this was all about story, and this place was abandoned. What happened here? Like, did everybody die? Like, this is the story you want to tell, and like, look how great elements you can get so quickly. You can throw texture on
Hmm.
things similar to kind of Keyshot in a way.
Hmm.
Like here I was building my next another scene here where I was building uh basically other rooms, and like you can
How
quickly.
this is actually interesting to me because what you're seeing now is how do you start? So the final ones that or more final one, the one you just showed, and then the previous one with the boat seem more or less like they've kind of resolved. But when you're starting out a new scene, what do you start with?
Well, I'm starting with these now. Like now that I have my world set up and I like the way it
Hmm.
is, like I have different start setup, but basically what I can do is duplicate this scene, and like to not
Hmm.
make the scene too heavy, I can use these because I love the lighting already. I
Yep.
have everything set up. I have my sun in there. I have my elements here that they're
Yeah,
already
you
in the
got everything
software
loaded. Hmm.
loaded and everything. So what I can do is basically start playing God and like just
And
throw
are
elements.
those just cubes? Are those scans at this point? Does it matter?
These ones, it doesn't matter because I've used anything to make a wall. These ones are actually
Hmm.
walls that I got from the marketplace because I wanted
Oh,
some
cool.
quick walls. But
Hmm.
there is many elements that actually come with the with Unreal, where there is walls, there is doorways, there is you can start with anything because you can
Mm.
see like even grabbing that wall and then you go in here, you can retexture it so quickly. It doesn't matter to me. Look, I can model a wall in Maya, like, but I'm doing
Hmm.
concepts, so it's like I'm not gonna bother modeling a wall. I can just use this wall, or what I've done too is to start a setup. You can actually start with creating elements because you can create
Yeah.
shapes. So you just create a cube, and the same results you can get from the cube to this wall. It's basically the same thing. This wall, only thing that this wall has is just a little bit more details, but
Hmm.
you can easily build a room with just in a reel, and
Hmm.
like
Just
you
with
don't even have
cubes.
just the cubes. And this is basically like a ground with some textures on it. It's not, this
Hmm.
is a plane, and I put some
Yeah.
textures in it, and the textures look so good. Look at this, how amazing they look already.
Hmm.
um Keep it simple, very simple elements. Take advantage of the library as much as you can and take elements from it just to serve your purpose. Like I can take these, apply a different uh, material to it, and like I'm gonna save this for another time, but uh, uh, easily create a room. And like look how interactive the lighting is. Like let's say I want to create a
Yeah.
roof out of this
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say if you pop a roof on that thing, you're gonna see how quickly the lighting like is creating like the bounce lighting.
bounce lighting, and like look how
Yeah.
easily you can art direct your scene.
Yeah. Like a
Like
shape that I was having a lot of fun with was doing like a pergola, like
mhm.
sort of a shape where there's like lots of planks that create shade. You can make that so fast and it looks so real and interesting. Like
it-
those kinds of shapes are so fast and cool.
it's so crazy. Like But yeah, so guys, that's like what I've. Josh, you've been exploring a lot of Unreal
I
too, and
have,
you've been
yeah.
excited about it. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody in the chat was asking, when is it okay to start relying, or when, I guess, when is it okay to use prepared assets, and when is it okay to make things yourself?
well, that's the thing. Like for my Sky Hut scene, the boat was
Hmm.
the most important thing to me, and that
Hmm.
was imperative that I built that. I will
Hmm.
say the most important elements in the scene needs to be coming from you, honestly.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I think that's a fair point, but it depends on how you use things. The way I see it, honestly, who cares that I didn't model that tree?
Right.
Um, if there's a character in the scene, of course, it would be my character.
Sure.
Um, I think
Have
it
you
all depends.
explored that process of getting characters in here?
Yeah, I did. I did. I can open it up too. See, now it's auto saving. I've done this other scene where some characters are in the water, and I was able, actually, that was my scene where I was able to
Mm.
explore how to
Oh, that's right. The one in
integrate
the swamp.
into Swamp. Yeah, like, and I actually have more of that I'm working on. It's just like then you get so excited about the next one, but like.
Yeah.
That one I call Tree Hunt, I could do so many images out of one scene too. Like you can get
Yeah.
so much and such a story out of it.
That's the
Um,
thing that I liked about it the most and have been liking about it the most is how quickly you can get other images. Like often,
right?
like you were talking about for your superhero design, like often you're making an image, then that's it. You're making one
Right.
angle, one pose, one thing. But when you start, excuse me, when you start working in this like real time environment, all of a sudden it kind of changes because you can start spinning around and throwing maybe a new pose in there, and very quickly you'll get something new.
It's still computing here. It's a
Yeah, no
quite
worries.
heavy. It's a quite heavy
Yeah, it
scene
looks
because
like
you can
it.
see I have full on foliage going on, like full on forest that I built out of
Yeah.
uh the scan trees and stuff, and like basically what I wanted to do is integrate some soldiers in the swamp. This was a
Hmm.
lot of fun because the amount of um, control you have on the lighting and on the elements of the scene. The water looks amazing right away. You have all the reflections right there. I should have
Hmm.
opened this scene before because it's quite a heavy scene because I have so many elements in it. But you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
see how I was able to integrate these characters, and I started these characters since it was a personal work. I bought a couple of scans of soldiers and I basically modified those,
Hmm.
and it was because I wanted to explore the pipeline of like, can I import my characters? How do I do it? How do I get that done? And how can I also have elements? Well, my idea here was to basically being able to kit bash directly into Unreal. As you can see now,
Hmm.
oh, now the trees are back. Looks really nice. So basically, what I did is I created packs. I created my own soldier pack of
Okay.
things. So if you go here, I can show that I have like backpacks here, soldier backpacks that I can actually go under my military object. I have goggles, flashlights, got like military bags, and I can drag and drop elements in the scene, and like from one character I can make other character. That's part of like kind of like kit bashing in ZBrush, but now you do it
Hmm.
in real. And how amazing this is! You already have all the textures there. Look, some elements of materials can be a little tricky. It's not like Keyshot where you can throw easily materials on it. But when you're doing painting, this is enough. If I can do another pass to make something more reflective.
Yeah.
For example, I made these goggles here, and I was able to go into the materials and make those goggles like glow.
Yeah.
And so, because I want to do other scenes where it's at night, I see how
There you go.
cool
Yeah.
those are glowing right there and live into my scene. They are glowing. And again,
Even
talking
that's a
about
cool shot, like right there. Like all these just like different angles you can get. Yeah. It
you
feels
get
like you
different
become like a
angles,
cinematographer at a certain point.
you are really playing God. Like at some point, it really become a matter of like your composition, your lighting. Like for me, it
Hmm.
was essential because I have a bunch of cameras here that I saved that I was exploring. And for me, it was essential to be able to control lighting, how the lights was hitting some areas that some characters could be in shadow, some characters could be in light. I had some fire element in the back at some point that I want to explore with. Um, so that's how look, even a top shot was interesting to do. And guys, like
Mm-hmm.
these elements are so easy to control because these are all elements that you can easily move
Yeah.
around,
Drag
s-
and drag and drop and
drag
move and
and drop and scale, and you can see how it looks like a set. So these in these other cameras, I actually hidden most of the foliage so that I can move faster in my scene and all of that. I have these um, to control my lighting. I had these big planes just to block some
mm-hmm.
of the lighting,
Mm-hmm.
from coming, and I had some smoke there, like all these elements, and I was able to retexture these trees very quickly to have all the same hues of greens and stuff. So that because I wanted
Mm-hmm.
everything to look very moldy. Um, so yeah, that's how I was able to do these characters and with different elements adding on top of them. And like, this was my first exploration on how to actually achieve these. I had to do
Mm-hmm.
some back and forth
Mm-hmm.
between Blender and stuff like that, and especially for scaling and stuff. So it's just something that's actually something, guys, I want to show also in my next DVD. Um, in the second part of my DVD, I want to show how I actually can integrate now Unreal in the pipeline and why it is a great tool to integrate in
Yeah.
our pipelines. So
That's a
um,
great shot right there too. You have so many different angles in this where it's like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's a good one.
I know, right? Like you have, like you can even do that, and like I even want
Even
to take
that,
that.
yeah.
So
You're like,
it's
I'll just
it's
save that one. Yeah.
yeah, and it's crazy. How, like, yeah, you can move the cameras around, you can move the characters around. It's such a great tool, and even the water. This is just a plane with some
Yeah.
great materials on it, and
Yeah, with a couple good textures on it.
the textures, and it's all artistically. Like I had a lot of fun, even just adding the foliage and making sure that
Mm-hmm.
foliage was in the right place. Like again, guys, going back to your camera, um, like here, I have these three element here just for this shot. It could be
Mm-hmm.
floating not in the right direction or something, but it's just for my shot here and give me the result I want. So
For sure. Have you gotten into playing around with sequencer and spawnable elements and doing any of that stuff, or are you
and with
still
sequencer, I
exploring?
did a little like on the other scene I showed you. I did some little simple movements of
Yeah. The
uh,
light.
the lighting and like panning in
Mm-hmm.
and out and like stuff like that. Because I'm still linked to images that I want to do because I do like I can
Sure.
show you guys that I took this scene and I brought it to Photoshop. The cool thing is that you have to you do a minimal amount of Photoshop for something like
Mm-hmm.
this because you have so many informations.
Yeah.
Um, so I just blurred these, I cleaned some areas, I added some
Mm-hmm.
uh, fixed some lighting and stuff like that, and that's it. Like there's so much
And then you're
from
done.
you're
Yeah,
done. So that's what I'm looking for. That's why I think this is a great add to my toolkit.
for sure. Do you see it as something that you will do for the type of work you were showing before? So, like, let's say it's a character in a space. Do you feel like this is going to be a useful tool for that?
I think so because it depends on the choice because it will be, let's say, in the sense of a creature, like the way I'm thinking right now. Another scene I
Mm,
want to do is, for example, having a dragon.
yeah.
And in the past, when I've done images like that, if you go into my portfolio, you can see I had a dragon in there. Then I had to Photoshop or paint the ground and the integration with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what actually I can achieve now is to have all of that. Because one thing I want to show too is that you can bring these elements in ZBrush and have the
Yeah.
textures there, and like you can
Mm-hmm.
here create a turntable with the environment in there.
Mm,
Um, so I can see that I just basically I want to expand also the integration of the character with the environment because characters, guys, just standing there on a gray background, they don't cut it anymore, in my opinion.
mm-hmm.
Like you want to push it to the next level.
Yeah.
It all depends on what you're doing, though. Like if it's something that I can quickly do in Photoshop, maybe not. If it's a dragon and I want it into this grassland or in some cool rocks, it's so easy to do rocks. Why wouldn't I use it?
Yeah. Yeah. To put a character in like a vast landscape or something like this, it's like it's so fast to add that environment, to add that mood, to have good lighting, to add the things that you would want to be there that used to be things that are super challenging, right? It used to be like, oh, I want to have a grassy landscape and a mountain. It's like, oh, that's days of work just to make that.
Yeah.
And now it's not. So it's like
Now it's not.
it's
The library
interesting.
is growing more and
Mm-hmm.
more, and I feel like it's kind of like photo bashing but with 3D.
Yeah.
And it's so powerful, and like, yeah, like you and all the ideas I'm coming up now with how to integrate it with ZBrush and Keyshot too, because you can do that
Mm-hmm.
too. Like, that's
Hmm.
another thing I would love to talk about at some point. Is like, you can take those elements. You do have to pay a subscription to use any of these elements outside of Unreal, guys.
Mm.
Which is very important. I think supporting the softwares is very important. um, but you can potentially use start in Unreal, go to ZBrush, then go back to Keyshot or Unreal, and work it that way too. Like, so the pipelines are
Mm.
my pipeline is always growing, especially now with this
Mm-hmm.
integration of this new software. I can see having an addition to the pipeline or a new pipeline on its own. ZBrush is not gonna go anywhere, but
No.
it is just adding to the pot basically.
Somebody's asking you, have you found a way to work without UVs inside of Unreal, or do you always have to make UVs for your models in Unreal?
Yeah, you do need some UVs, and
Mm-hmm.
the cool thing is that Blender can give you some automatic UVs. Like, I've for the boat, that's what I did. I had some quick
Mm-hmm.
UVs, auto UVs from Blender, and it was
Mm-hmm.
so perfect. I just threw it in there and it worked. So making the software talk, you have to have some steps you have to
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately do that are kind of technical. But guys, it's like kind of ZBrush. ZBrush can get very technical, but if you know what you're doing, you can use it very artistically and not have those technicalities stop you. You know?
Yeah. I've been exploring with that as well, and I found that uh, you can also use ZBrush's UV Master. That's also
Oh,
great.
yep,
And you can use the FBX export, and it'll take all your maps, and you can import it as a single FBX with all your textures, and it'll come in. It takes a little longer than the bridge from Keyshot. I think personally,
right.
I still felt like I was kind of spoiled from what Keyshot did with the bridge. It's like this is so quick, and I didn't have to do anything. It is a little longer, but you do need those UVs in Unreal.
Yeah, but think about it also. This is Unreal 5 is not even released yet. This is a
Right.
pre-release. Think about
Hmm.
what if we use it more and more. I mean, we showed it. History shows that the more we use these softwares, guys, the makers of the software, they listen to us. They
Oh yeah.
want to make us happy. Keyshot and ZBrush, they came to it. We wanted that badly, and they did it.
Yeah.
They came up with a bridge, one click. I can
Yep.
see Unreal becoming a one-stop shop at some point, man,
Mm.
because of all those editing tools. Like, you can actually go in and delete verti- uh, play,
Individual polys.
polygons, yeah, individual
Yep.
areas, and of course the modeling is not the same. It's not that I will still use Blender for now, but I can see them becoming one software. Like,
Hmm.
do
Hmm.
you like? Do you think that? Do you see that?
For me, the only thing that I feel like Unreal is missing is the ability to do basic modeling, like to make a shape from nothing is I
Right.
think the thing that it lacks. But I think as soon as it's able to do that, it's hard. I mean, for me, I see Maya is obviously like industry standard for, productions, for VFX productions and stuff like that. But for concept art, it's probably ZBrush, Blender, and Unreal are the three that I see being the main ones. I mean, I've been watching some stuff recently, people sculpting in Blender, people
Yeah.
modeling in Blender, people rendering and texturing in Blender, and they're creating stuff that looks great. I think that there's some things that Unreal lacks.
Yeah.
I think it's just because it's still a bit more of a technical tool set. It's not.
Mhm.
It's not developing from a DCC where you're making models. You're not making poly models. That's not how Unreal started. It started as a real-time renderer,
Yeah.
and so I think it's working its way almost in reverse to like what does it need, whereas other things are working the other direction of we're a Maya or something else, and we want to create the rendering style and the quickness of what Unreal has. So they're both trying seemingly to do the same thing, but they're just like going the opposite directions to get there. Um, I think it's be really fascinating. I think 3, 4, 5 years from now, when we see what, when Unreal 5 is released, when we see what Blender's doing in 5 years or whatever, I think that's going to be really interesting because
Yeah.
I think it's just going to be one of those things where uh, I don't see it slowing down. I certainly don't see it slowing down, like at all,
No.
at all. I think it's
Yeah.
going to be faster and faster. For me, the big thing that changed was ZBrush in general, like being able to sculpt in ZBrush, being able to have multiple subtools. Like I remember like ZBrush 2 when, you couldn't do that, and and that's changed modeling forever. And I think this real-time wave that we're in, whether it's virtual productions, LED walls, all that stuff, people want to see it real time. They want to see it fast.
Yeah, I've been on so many production now where they have a virtual production, a virtual
Mm,
virtual art department, and
yeah.
things are done in Unreal. Things are done like I was doing an animated project, and we were animating all the shots in Unreal. It was crazy how, and it was up helping. That's why
Yeah.
I came with the idea of using it too, because we were doing some forest elements, and it was so easy to
Hmm.
do, and it was helping the concept team as well, getting the concepts done. Uh, it's a great point. You make a great point about how it's working in reverse, and the other
Mm,
software are doing the opposite. Because I can see Unreal now, like even with these editing tools, they really it shows you that they are understanding. It's like, oh, people actually want to use these more than
yeah.
what it is intended
Yeah.
for. And if they create a bridge of some sort, things that can connect the softwares like that,
Yeah.
uh, it would be a game changer too.
I think what's interesting about both of those programs, Blender and Unreal, is Blender has such a huge community behind it, and
Yeah.
there's so many people. You can find anything you want to do it, and so does Unreal. Um, and they're both approaching it in a relatively fresh way. And in some ways, they both remind me of ZBrush when it came out, and even currently, they have done so many new things that people. I mean, just think about like the basics of like Dynamesh or ZRemesh
Yeah.
or UV Master or basic stuff that we don't even Polypaint, like things that those weren't workflows. That wasn't like a standard workflow. And when I see like the stuff that Blender's doing and the stuff that Unreal's doing, I think that they're approaching the way that we would want to make things in a different way, kind of like the perspective that Pixelogic had at the time, where what would be the best way to paint on something? Well,
Hmm.
traditionally it would be you UV it and then you paint on the UVs, and that's like what they did in Mudbox, and that's still a great way to do textures. But when you want to speed up the workflow, you have to change the way that it's different that you do it. So even seeing like the plane cut, like
Right.
in Unreal, that's a crazy tool. That's an insane tool that doesn't exist in most other softwares because they're approaching it from a different angle of like we have a massive scan library with beautiful textures, but we know people like you want to edit those. So what tools do we need to give them to do that? So it's really fascinating. I think it's so hard to predict, but I'm just super excited about it
Yeah, me
because it's
too.
one of those things where you're like, the Lego kit that's going to be here in 5 years for everybody to play in is going to be huge.
Yeah.
It's going to be really cool.
Yeah, totally. And they're just gonna grow, and they're also gonna grow in how we push them to grow. That's also
Mm-hmm.
what's exciting to me, because the more concept we do in Unreal, and to be honest, since I started using Unreal, it's been just a few months.
Mm-hmm.
I started to receive so many more um, from video game companies, even more interest from video game companies, because like,
Interesting.
oh, you can actually now use our software too,
Yeah, we'll
and
take that
like,
file when you're done. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. They can
yeah,
actually, if you think about it, it won't be clean, it won't be great, but like what they do for us now, like they take our ZBrush, right?
yep,
They could take your Unreal model like that. I mean, that makes you a very powerful concept art. It's very
yeah,
essential.
yeah,
And
yeah. I
again,
agree.
even just as a tool that you have in your toolkit, like, oh, I need some leaves, perfect, Unreal.
Mm-hmm.
If I have to model something, yeah, I still use Blender or Maya. I mean, there's no
Sure.
way around it
Yeah.
for now. I wish I would had one stop shop, because that will just make it faster. But like, nothing like I since I learned Blender, Blender is even easier the modeling tools are even easier in Blender than Maya, and like
Mm.
so it's becoming harder for me to fall back into Maya. But like I've done Maya for so many years, like I feel like I'm
You still feel
betraying Maya.
comfortable. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and
Here's a good
But
question that came in. It's more about the
yes.
ZBrush versus Blender, but how do you think Blender compares to ZBrush? Is it a good alternative for ZBrush if you can't afford it?
I mean, look, I've seen people do crazy things in Blender. I think it
Mm-hmm.
all depends on how you get used to the software. Because I think you look, ZBrush is very specific for that type of modeling.
Mm-hmm.
That is so solid, like the subdivision surfaces you can get, the details you can get. ZBrush
Mm-hmm.
is still the top of the food chain regarding to that. But I've seen people use Sculptris, or
Yeah.
I've used Oculus Medium to sculpt
Mm.
in VR. Like if you go watch Gio Napkel, the stuff that he does in VR, it's mind blowing. I didn't even know he was
Yeah.
capable of doing that. And it's such a basic software because if you go into the software, it's very clunky. It doesn't have all the things that you need there. You miss a lot of things from ZBrush, but people are still doing crazy things about it. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily the software, guys. It's also about you. It's what you can
Yeah.
do.
I would kind of echo that and say I agree. It's not necessarily the software. There's so much cool stuff people are doing in every program. So like if you're somebody who can't afford ZBrush, Blender's fine. Blender's free. Blender also, just so everybody, in case you're not aware, Blender is owned by a nonprofit. It's never going to cost you money. It's
Never.
always going to be free forever. So like if you want to invest your money or your time into a program that is going to keep getting better and isn't going to charge you money, Blender. It's the perfect person. It's the perfect thing. We tell every student that comes to Gnomon, like if they're interested in learning 3D and they want to come into a program, we tell them try Blender because if you like it, you'll like 3D and it's a great program to get started and there's huge communities. You can learn anything you want. You know, the amount of donuts I've seen made from the Blender Guru is insane. Like
Yeah.
it's so cool though to see how a tool like that is making it so accessible for people to learn stuff, which probably like you, I think you said this earlier, but the first time I opened Maya, I was terrified
Yeah.
opening Maya. It was so scary. It was like you open this program, you don't know what any of the buttons do, and you're just like, well, I'm closing this now. I'll
Yes.
open you later. Like, we'll see
First
how this
day
goes.
is just
Yeah.
looking at the interface and try to take it in.
You're like, oh, there's so much stuff in here. There's so many buttons. There's so many
Yeah.
panels. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. That's my one of my favorite things to do when I'm talking to a friend that doesn't know what we do, doesn't know ZBrush, and I just open up the software in front of them and they're like, "Oh, magic."
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
Yep,
And I'm
yep.
so familiar with it. Like ZBrush doesn't it's not
Yeah.
scary at all. It's such a happy place to be in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Especially once you get used to it. So yeah, I think Blender's a great alternative. I would definitely think that you should try that out. Well, Luca, I wanted to say thank you very much. That was awesome tonight. Thank you so much for being on stream with us. Thank you for showing off your workflow. I will be messaging you many questions
Oh.
and back and forth things of what you do in Unreal because I think it's awesome. So yeah, super appreciate you being on here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. I hope I gave you guys some good informations, and I love the community. Let's share. Like me and Josh, we
Hmm.
talk back and forth on Instagram. I'm gonna ask you questions too because
Yeah,
we get so excited about the new toys and the new things we're
yeah.
doing and growing as artists. And I feel like that's why Gnomon was so great for me. Like I lived at Gnomon for a few years, even if I was doing
Hmm.
courses, because I lived right next to it. The labs were opening until 1 a.m. I was always
Hmm.
there. And you
Yeah,
breathe the art, you breathe what other people are doing, you learn from each other. And also don't be afraid of asking questions, you guys. Like, even if you want to shoot me an email, like let's talk. Like I'd love to do this again. Like we just hang out, work at night and talk about things. That's why I
yeah.
love these softwares. I feel like they bring us together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that was my experience too, going to Noman. It was there all the time, but also just it was a community of people who were into the same things that I was into, and they were passionate about it. And so we could talk about how amazing the plane cut tool is for 30 minutes, and how the cool ways you could use it. And that's just such a specific, unique community.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's very cool.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like one thing it can take you forever to learn. One friend can show you in a second.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
nice to have people by your side in communities who can do that.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much again, Luca, and thank you to everybody who's been watching the stream today. We really appreciate it. Again, thank you to Lenovo for sponsoring this event, and of course, thank you to Gnomon Workshop for helping us get Luca here and for doing your workshop title. That's awesome. Again, we posted it in the chat a couple times and we flashed it on screen a couple times, but there is a code which is available called Luca 20, Luca Luca, all caps 20, which will give you 20% off either your first month or and 20% off an annual subscription. It only lasts till basically a week from tomorrow or a week from today. So if you like that, and if you're interested in that, which you should be, save that 20% on an annual subscription. I think that'd be great. And then also we will be doing our raffle for anybody who RSVP'd. So if you're still here and you're watching, thank you. But also RSVP for our future events so that you can be eligible for any raffles that we do, and those will be on Eventbrite. So thank you all very much for hanging out with us. Thank you again, Luca.
Thank you,
It
Josh.
was awesome. We will see you all next time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Bye bye.
Bye.